But we can decide whether we are going to sink under the weight of Brexit or whether we are going to swim, yes, against the tide in order to overcome or at least offset many of its disadvantages. And I am a swimmer, not a sinker in this. We've got to look at this situation as a trigger, as a catalyst for turning around our economy. We've got to look at two things in my view. We've got to look at, you mentioned universities. We've got to look to our great research-intensive universities where our first-class science and technology base exists, and we've got to see how we can mobilise and galvanise that base and commercialise it to create new businesses and industries out of that base. And secondly, we've got a massive pensions and savings sector in this country. We've got to make sure that money, that liquidity is more efficiently put into industry, put into business, rather than going overseas and just buying government bonds.
Swiftly there, but every politician that sits in this studio says they want to grow the economy.
Exactly. And the idea that Labour has some silver bullet to fix the economy is simply nonsense. The challenges are deep-rooted. They go back to the global financial crisis. What people need to hear from the Labour Party is how it is going to deliver this additional economic growth. And what I think we all need to be reassured about is that as a Labour government finds in its second or third year, it isn't delivering that magic economic growth. It will be inexorably to the left by the forces of the left within the Labour Party, within its trade union support base, and we need a strong opposition in Parliament to make sure that we hold this Labour government, if that's what we get, to account.
Suzanne, when politicians talk about wanting growth, do you think your viewers and our viewers are still believe them?
I mean, who doesn't want growth? You know, we need growth. It's hugely important. I think part of the driver of growth is a really strong education system. I'd really like more investment in the education system. It used to be that the Labour Party said that those with shoulders should be able to pay a little bit more, and we're definitely not hearing that message right now from the Labour Party.
Okay, well, that would be a bit later in the programme. Time always goes so quickly on Sunday mornings, but let's get on with looking at some of the numbers. Now, neither of the parties really believe the polls, which have, for better or worse, become part of the campaign themselves. But there's been wild variation. So what should we do? Well, let's have a calm assessment of what's really going on. Here is John Curtis with 60 Seconds on Sunday.
Neither the Conservatives nor Labour are having a fruitful campaign. The latest polls put both of them down 4 points compared with the outset. But that means the Conservatives on 20% are still 20 points behind Labour. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage's Reform UK party is now just 2 points behind the Tories. But the worst news for the Conservatives has come from 5 megapolls that estimated the likely outcome in seats. Their tally for the Tories ranged widely, from 53 to 155. But even 155 would be the party's worst result ever. And crucially, all these megapolls said Conservative support is falling most heavily in constituencies the party is defending, compounding its losses. Conservative support has fallen by a couple of points in Scotland too, but this is of little comfort to the SNP, who, on 32%, trail Labour by 4 points.
Well, let's get straight on with that then. John said it's looking grisly for the SNP in their current tally of 43 of the 59 Scottish seats in the House of Commons. The arrival of the experienced Minister, John Spinner, as the first Minister after a Tory was meant to be the start of a more peaceful era for the SNP. About 6 weeks into the job, he's fighting a general election, and I'm pleased to say that he's with us for the first time in the programme now. Good morning, Mr. Spinning. I just want to start by asking about a developing story today. Now, viewers should know it's against the rules for taxpayers' cash to be used in campaigning. But there have been allegations over the last week that SNP staff members have been using stamps paid for with public money for campaign purposes. And the Mail on Sunday today says someone in your office was involved in discussions about doing that, allegedly using material paid for by the public purse. What do you say to that?
Well, I've obviously discussed this with my staff, and I can assure you that no parliamentary stamps that have been provided by Parliament have the people's inquiries.
One WhatsApp message we got this morning sent to an SNP group chat, your assistant wrote, the stamp fairy is very useful when it comes to campaigns. Who's the stamp fairy?
Well, we campaign on a regular basis in my capacity as a member of parliament, so we're engaging with the public on a countless range of different issues. So I think these are sort of humorous remarks made in a WhatsApp channel, and what's important is the reassurance that we have that parliamentary stamps have not been used for election purposes.
It might sound like quite a small issue, and maybe that's just a humorous message, but there's a hugely important principle here about public money being used for campaigning purposes by political parties. Are you completely sure that your party has not been using any public money to fund your election campaign?
I'm confident.
Bob Dylan.
We've also been engaging in a fundraising
Then I
campaign.
said, Bombilanka.
It's been supported by the many members that we have around about the country. The Scottish National Party is fortunate that we have
Then I said, well, Bombilanka.
party in Scotland. Indeed, we've got more members than all the other parties combined, and those members have been supporting our election campaign and enabling us to have the resources available to us generated and raised from within our party membership base to
Tweaker.
support us in our campaigning activity.
You've got a
Don't
lot
do
of
that.
money than you used to have, and part of that is because of concerns that many voters in Scotland also share about standards in the SNP. I mean, if we just look at the recent past, you had the scandal around Alex Salmond, the former First Minister's behaviour. Nicola Sturgeon was arrested. You have the party's former chief executive charged with embezzlement. Now, you're a very well-respected politician who's been around the SNP for a long time. Would you understand if voters wanted to punish you at this election for all of that that's gone on?
We've had a tough time, Laura, and I think that's been acknowledged, I've acknowledged that on a constant basis since I became First Minister just about 7 weeks ago, and I've been very candid about the fact that I recognise that the SNP has had that tough time, and that my job is to rebuild the trust between the public of Scotland and the Scottish National Party. That's what I'm focused on as First Minister. Obviously, I've come into an election campaign very quickly after becoming First Minister. I acknowledge, and I've always acknowledged this in my representation of those who've chosen me to go to Parliament, that you have got to work constantly to build the trust that you experience with members of the public, and that's exactly what I do as leader of the Scottish National Party and as the First Minister of Scotland.
Well, let's talk about whether voters can trust
Dylan.
the policies you're making this time.
Yeah, Dylan.
Because your manifesto says if you win a majority of Scottish seats in the general election, that you would push again for a referendum on Scottish independence. But the Tories have said no, the courts have said that the SNP can't do that on its own, and just a couple of days ago, Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, also said he wouldn't talk about it. So you're making a promise again that you wouldn't be able to keep.
I think this is really in the hands of the people of Scotland, to be honest, and it's a deeply democratic question. In 2021, the people of Scotland elected a parliament that is committed to holding an independence referendum and has supported independence. And essentially, the United Kingdom government has not enabled that expression of opinion by the people of Scotland to put into democratic effect. So what I'm saying in this election is that if people in Scotland want us to progress on the arguments about independence, if they want Scotland to be an independent country, then they've got to support the Scottish National Party as the only means of ensuring that can come about. And we cannot allow the Westminster political parties to deny the people of Scotland their democratic rights and their democratic opportunity to decide their own constitutional future, because that's a fundamental point at the heart of our democracy.
But the fundamental point, and I know you don't like it, is
Dingle.
that Westminster has the
Not
power
Westminster.
to say
It's
no
not Westminster.
to going any further along that road. Keir Starmer and
Get in
Rishi Sunak have both said repeatedly they will not talk about it. So your promise to voters in this election is a promise that you would not be able to keep, and that's your decision to put it front and centre of your manifesto.
It is, because I think it's it's an essential solution to the issues that people face in their lives today. So if you look at the challenges of public spending cuts, which we've talked about in this programme, the devastating effect of Brexit on our country and our economy,
How are your secretaries?
the impact of the cost of living that have been delivered by Westminster, takes up all the problems created by Westminster decision making of forcing us into a European Union against the will of the people of Scotland, and in the prolonging of public spending cuts, which is what the Labour Party will do when they come to office. Now, my answer to that is to make sure that decisions about the future of Scotland are made in Scotland for Scotland, and that can only come about if people are prepared to vote for that in the forthcoming general election, and to give us the electoral support and the political support that will enable us to deliver a referendum on independence, because that is the secure route of ensuring the people of Scotland are able to decide on their own constitutional future and be able to address these devastating impacts of austerity and Brexit and the cost of living, which are really causing severe damage within Scottish economy and Scottish society.
Except that everybody watching, particularly in Scotland, will know that you have repeatedly promised to do this. When we've had a majority of MPs in Scotland for many years, we've had power in Holyrood in Scottish Parliament for many years, and it's not something that you've been able to deliver thus far, and you're making the same promise again. You say that this is about democracy. If you don't get a majority of Scottish seats in this election, will you accept that means it's the will of the Scottish people that they don't want to have another independence referendum?
Well, I'm not going to prejudge the outcome of the election, which is just in about 12 weeks' time.
Hang on, you can't have it both ways. You're saying if you have a majority, you will do this, but if you don't have a majority, then not answer that part of the question. So if you don't have a majority, will you accept that that is the Scottish electorate telling you that you don't want to pursue independence right now?
The Scottish Parliament voted, was elected in 2021 with a majority of members for a 5-year term committed to the delivery of a referendum on independence and to delivering Scottish independence if that was supported in the referendum. I think that democratic mandate from the people of Scotland, clearly given, has got to be delivered. And I think this election is an opportunity for us to advance those arguments, but it's crystal clear that people in Scotland have expressed their preference to determine their own constitutional future, and I think Westminster should remove the obstacles that are stopping Scotland from having that choice.
But that was in 2021. There is about to be a big vote in 2024. If you lose support at this general election, do you accept that will mean that you are losing support for independence? That is surely the simple democratic logic.
Well, the democratic logic is that the people of Scotland have had their democratic will thwarted since 2021. And I'd like people in Scotland in this election on a week on Thursday to make sure that they exercise their view and their voice, to make sure we have that strongest demonstration possible of the support that is necessary to deliver Scottish independence, and to make sure that Westminster stops blocking the democratic aspirations of the people of Scotland.
Just on one final point, you were Education Secretary for the many jobs you've done in the Scottish administration.
Julian.
Scottish education has slid down the
Bubble
international
No,
rankings
shout
to
it.
the disappointment of many people. But we talked a
Dilonga.
lot on our programme about what happens with children and phones in the
Jukutin.
classroom. Bridget Phillipson said that she will make sure that head
Join
teachers
me, join you,
in
join
England
Dana.
keep
Why
kids
wanted to
out
get
of
up
schools if she wins
Vi har ju
the Labour
doj.
Party this
Vi
election.
har blå.
And the Scottish
Vi har ju doj, oj, oj, bom. Vi har ju doj, oj, bom. Boing, bam, bom. Boom, bang. It's a boom, bang.
Demonstrated a range of different perspectives on this question. Some teachers believe that having funds available to young people
Jika, jika.
process
Tweak it, long, young, young.
disruptive to classroom teaching and to the cohesion of school.
Dig along,
So
bumper.
there's a careful route to be constructed here, but we are working very closely with the education system to make sure we
Dig it,
have and clear guidance in place, because we cannot
Dig along, 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 along.
where mobile phone technology is disruptive to
Clock
the education
gun.
process, and we must be sure that
Không chịu tin là đi lì lì lì
the
bom.
education profession
Tôi ca là tôi bà lùm bơ.
are properly and fully realised, or having a supportive environment within the classroom,
Right, I'm just gonna
and a
go
stable
change.
environment within
The cover saying that's fine, he says to you.
I think that is a label, but just as
The cover says that's fine.
we've had on the
It's the
programme
cover.
this morning, we wish you a happy day on the campaign trail. We've been saying that to all of our politicians who've been with us this morning. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the programme. It's great to have you with us. Thank you. Well, let's return to our panel then. Scottish politics has been certainly in flux in the last few years, but in the last couple of weeks, right-wing politics has been in flux. But Hammond, as you're here, I have to ask you about what is going on with Nigel Farage. Now, huge story in the last couple of days about his attitude to NATO and Ukraine. But many of your people in your party believe you should do more to accommodate his kind of politics, and that's the solution. What do you say to them?
Well, I say to them that they're wrong. We should have no truck with Nigel Farage and this right-wing populism which tries to pretend that there are simple, easy solutions for the deep-rooted challenges and problems that the country has. There are no quick fixes, there are no free lunches, and the kind of snake oil that Nigel Farage is peddling, in my view, has no place in our democratic politics, and his exposure now as an apologist for Putin, this country's direct adversary and a threat to the security of all of us, means that he should play no part in our democratic
Why
politics.
do you
I
think?
just wish we'd held the election later, by which time I'm sure he would have disappeared off to America to play games with Mr.
Did you
Trump.
tell me she's in
Instead of, I'm afraid I don't have that kind of access. But I see, and just to conclude the point, I hope we will not hear any more from any of my colleagues in the Conservative Party suggesting that there is a route for Nigel Farage into the Conservative Party. There is no space for Nigel Farage in the Conservative Party.
Susanna, lots of people do find him appealing. Lots of people do want to listen to him. Lots of people do find him interesting and maybe entertaining. Why do you think that is?
Well, if you look at the polls, there was a poll which showed that he was going to overtake the Tories in terms of votes. Look, we interviewed Nigel Farage on our programme Good Morning Britain this week and challenged him on the fact that there's a quality problem with a number of his candidates. 41 of them friends on Facebook with somebody who's described as a fascist leader. He said that's a problem with vetting. I'm not sure how much vetting money you need to put into checking whether your candidate's friends with fascists on social media, and that's not just liking a post or looking at one. It's actually, making a positive connection with one. That's a worry, and that's something that he certainly needs to get on top of.
Ms Morrison, just finally to you, Labour is by nature superstitious, maybe even a touch paranoid, but should they be, or how seriously do you think they are really preparing for government?
I think they are very seriously preparing for government, and I think you heard that from Bridget Phillipson this morning. Can I just say that you didn't ask us anything about John Sweeney and his interview, and I think the reason for that is that it's perfectly clear the game's up for the SNP. What the Scottish people now need is not an SNP-led government that's going to go head-to-head the entire time with the UK government. They need Scottish people in a newly elected Labour government that will get benefits for Scotland. The SNP has become structurally irrelevant to the Scottish people. So that's just to make that point, if you don't mind. But secondly, absolutely central. I'm sorry to keep going on about this, and Philip, I didn't talk about a silver bullet. The task of turning around this country and rebuilding our economy is a long-term one. It's not a short-term one. Yes, we can make some quick changes, and yes, we can take some early steps to change things in our health service, our schools, and fighting crime on the streets. But everything we want to do in the long term depends on turning around and rebuilding our economy.
Okay.
And that has to be central to what a new Labour government does.
Well, we
They
will.
don't have a plan to do it.
Well, I think
They have an
they
aspiration, but
I
they
think
don't
they
have a
do
plan.
have a plan, and if you had just 5 million minutes, I'd be very happy to.
We never have 5 more minutes. We've already extended it 15 minutes today because there's so much to talk about. But even then, we are now out of time. I wish we were a longer term programme. It's been great having all three of you with us this morning. And I know, of course, that politicians of every stripe will still be out fighting for every single vote. There is 11 days to go and nothing is settled. A huge thank you to my trio at the desk. The biggest thanks to you, of course, for watching at home as the clock ticks louder and louder to polling day. For all that the two main party leaders are known for being straight-laced, maybe not so exciting, Some of the events in this campaign have been pretty wild, so who knows what will happen by the time we meet again. I'll be with Clive Myrie on Wednesday night on BBC One after the next clash between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. I'll be on this Sunday's newscast with Paddy O'Connell, which will pop up on BBC Sounds later on today, but I will most of all look forward to seeing you next Sunday, same time, same place. Goodbye for now.
You're the traitor, shut up.
The Traitors US. Press red for all episodes on BBC iPlayer.
It's your election, and now the last debate pictures Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer head to head for your vote. They'll answer your questions and make their arguments about why they should lead the country. The Prime Ministerial Debate from Nottingham, Wednesday at 8:15 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Now on BBC One, Politics South with Peter Henley.
It is getting closer, less than a fortnight to go now until it's make your mind up time for voters and crunch time for politicians. Welcome to Politics South. With a dozen more days to go, we are talking about the issue that's really high on your agenda, if not right at the top, the cost of living. Inflation's dropped to 2% this week, but the Bank of England left interest rates unchanged. How are you feeling about a pound in your pocket? Will that sway you deciding who gets your vote? And sport and politics. Does how the national team perform in the Euros and the national mood that creates, good or bad, have any influence on where we put our cross in the voting booth?
We know that national sporting events, particularly football, obviously in the UK and Europe, can affect people's daily strategies. It increases patriotism, it increases sort of often optimism and things like that.
All that coming up. First, let's meet the candidates here in the studio for today's debate. Yuan Yang is standing for Labour in the new constituency of Burley and Woodley. Tobias Ellwood, Conservative candidate in Bournemouth East, and Sarah Morris standing for Reform UK in another new constituency, Isle of Wight East, and Layla Moran, the Liberal Democrat candidate in Oxford West. And welcome to all of you. Before we dive into the debate, let's take a look at how the campaign is shaped up here in the South. Southampton Docks was the venue for Labour's launch of their plans for economic